Okay, hello, welcome everyone. Chetan here from micebook, back with a talks which we haven't done for quite a few weeks actually. So I thought it'd be good to get some fab industry people together to talk about what they're seeing in the current climate. And of course, we're going to talk about the recent announcement. But before we get to that, a few quick announcements from me, from micebook. So we have an event next Wednesday, which is a rock up and pay as you go event at Between the Bridges, which is in Waterloo. So if you go to mustbeonit.com, you'll see the details. It's literally pay as you go. Let's just get together. We thought about doing a virtual event or a hybrid event, and we thought, no, let's just get together, have a drink and see what happens. So if anyone's around next Wednesday in Waterloo, London, from 3 p.m. onwards, and just rock up. The early bird tickets finishes this Friday for the V Awards. We've already over 50% sold of our table, so do get in there quickly. We are working to restrict capacity still because we still don't know what the venue will say, but hopefully we could extend it, but over 50% sold already, so do get in. And welcome to Nicola. I'm not sure if she's on yet, but Nicola, who's joined the team. Just say welcome to her. She is Nicola Root, which quite a few of you might know from the industry, has joined us as Client and Brand Services Director. So yeah, very excited to have her on board, and hopefully she'll catch up with some of you over the next few weeks. Right, let's get into the session. I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and company name, company, what kind of work you do, and also we did this before last time with the leaders call. Who's really pissing you off at the moment? If it's a person, an organization, a politician, who's really just grating you? Let's start with Kirsty.
No time to prepare. Okay, hi, I'm Kirsty. I'm from First Event. We do conferences, meetings, all sorts, really. Was there another question, or was it just who's pissing me off? I think... yeah, I think the thing probably is all to do with the travel stuff. So that's annoying me because I'm constantly having to move stuff. So I think I'm getting pissed off about what's pissing me off is the media making a big hoo-ha out of stuff that's not a big deal. That's what's pissing me off. Every day you think things are better. And then the thing yesterday was about another even more contagious variant. So I just wish they'd just calm down with it. Because every time I think there's good news, there's something to try and rain on that parade.
Thank you, Kirsty. Kate.
Hi, I'm Kate from Freshly Squeezed Events, and we run bespoke. We're a bespoke events agency, quite well known for some pretty awesome incentives, but we run an awful lot of virtual events now and lots of other stuff too. I haven't prepared about who's pissing me off. I'm trying to stay all positive here. Right, yeah, loads of people. I don't know. I don't know where to start. Yeah, just the confusion, continuous announcements that we're going to be making announcements. It has to be Boris probably. Matt Hancock pissed me off the other week because he was one rule for him and one rule for everyone else. And Dominic Cummins, who pissed me off last year when he lied blatantly. And now he's stirring everything. There you go, that's 3 people. That's me over and out.
Chris.
Chris Lynn Shore Events. We're a nice small agency down on the seaside in Brighton, which is very sunny at the moment. Who's pissing me off? The Transatlantic Committee, that God knows what they're doing or reporting or whatever, but yeah, we need the US to open for our markets, even to go and see our 2 top clients that want to see us in the US. And we, unless we go to Mexico for 2 weeks beforehand, can't go in there. So yeah, that's me.
Which you just recently did, which we might hopefully come on to in a second. Thanks, Chris. So this is our talks. It's recorded. It will be on our podcast. It will be on our forum if anyone wants to watch it back later. We've got the chat box for questions on the right. So not just me, but please do pop in there anything else you want the panel to answer. And always the objective is to recover faster and stronger. And we really appreciate the panel's honesty when answering some of the questions we're going to put to them today. So let's get into it. I'm going to do it in 2 stages. We're going to come on to the recent announcement a little bit later on. Let's go back to you, Chris. Just in terms of what you're seeing, let's start with the UK. I don't know how much you do in the UK, but what are you seeing in the UK? Is anything booking, inquiries? What's actually confirmed? when, what kind of size? Give us a quick outline of what you're seeing in terms of bookings.
Yeah, so we didn't used to do a lot of UK, but we do now. People that are meant to have travelled elsewhere are coming back to the UK. We've got a group in Scotland in September. Fingers crossed for the weather. We've got a couple of Christmas events that are already confirmed for December. So yeah, I think that it's actually interesting for us, spaces that we haven't looked at before or may not have considered because everyone wants to go abroad. We're putting some great stuff forward for the UK. So yeah, I think people are seeing it as a viable option now, and it removes some of the risk. Yes, you've still got people that want to travel abroad, but if people are a bit wary, then traveling up the road is safer at this time.
And what sort of timeframes are you seeing? Is it Q4?
Yeah. So
any earlier?
So yeah, September. So that's just at the end of Q3.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then looking into the beginning of next year.
Okay. Kate, what about you? What are you seeing?
In terms of the UK or just in general?
Yeah, let's stay with UK to start with.
Yeah. Well, no, we've got slightly different actually. Everyone's just wanting to get the hell out of the UK at the moment. So most of our briefs, like all of the events we've won, I think we've got Miami, Bahamas, Dubai, South Africa, and one in the UK. Actually, that's a lie because we are doing we've just got a Bond event. We're doing something with Bond premiere. So that's, I think, when's that? October. But pretty much, and a roadshow next year in the UK. But apart from that, it's all abroad, all aboard to go abroad.
All right, let's stay with let's stay with abroad then. So where are you seeing abroad? When? What kind of numbers?
Well, we're doing lots of ski. We've got ski events booked already. I'm just looking at my list here. So we've got, out of that I just mentioned, the 5 that we've got confirmed: Miami, Bahamas, Dubai, South Africa, and the UK. A couple in the UK. And then lots of the briefs, all of the briefs that are coming in there for the Caribbean. We've got a sort of roadshow across Europe, skiing, Dubai, Ibiza. So quite a mix, really. I have to say they are, you might notice there's a theme though. They're kind of countries that we anticipate are more likely to be okay. I don't know why, because it's quite unknown, isn't it? But yeah, there's quite a theme of the Caribbean because, you know, it's actually because of the restrictions there are not as aggressive as in other places. But yeah, that gives you a bit of a snapshot, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think perception is going to be really hugely key, not only for the decision makers, but then when they say this is what we're doing to the attendees, you want them to go, yes, we want to go. So I can understand some of those destinations being chosen above maybe some other more exotic ones.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a real will to go east, and we're noticing. So, you know, it's kind of Caribbean states, skiing, Dubai, Middle East, South Africa. So we haven't had really much at all. I don't know about everyone else, but really people don't seem to be too interested in going east at the moment.
No, isn't that strange? Because the East is actually, you know, lots of parts of the East are doing very well.
Yeah.
It's the opening up though. We just moved something from Bali to have to look kind of elsewhere because even for site inspections, where we got virtual site inspections are great, but a client won't commit to something. So it's not only being able to run the event when it's actually happening, but being able to do a site inspection now. So that's where they want to be able to go somewhere. But then places that are less complex, like the Maldives, for example, places like that, people are willing to commit to. But if you're talking about moving people around, the Golden Triangle, all of that sort of thing, people aren't going to go, yeah, let's do that, because they want to see what it is. And I think it's going to be not only interesting for people, for the countries in the East when they open up, but when they open up, they're going to panic. If they get 10 cases, they're going to go, yeah, okay. Whereas the other way in the US, like our US clients have forgotten what COVID is. We had a couple of guests on our trip who Jodie from the team mentioned earlier, never really had to wear a mask, never really knew what was going on with COVID. So yeah, trying to get them to go somewhere is difficult.
Just got a question here in the chat, Kate, for you. Just are they new inquiries, or are they kind of existing kind of events that were postponed?
Oh no, I've only mentioned brand new stuff. Yeah, we've got. I mean, we've postponed a heap of them, I have to say. So, you know, they're and they are all over the place. And I think Kirsty mentioned one client that you're on your 5th iteration, basically, and we've got one client that we've moved for the 5th time. So these are the ones I'm mentioning. I thought it would be more interesting to talk about stuff that's coming in now, just to get a vibe for what's happening out there now, rather than sort of historically.
Okay, let's go to Kirsty. Just tell us the same, UK and overseas. What are you seeing? What kind of destinations, numbers?
Yeah, so we've seen a massive increase in the last couple of months at inquiries coming in. I'd say same to what Chris was saying. So September's busy and kind of the end of the year, that's mainly in the UK. We're seeing a lot of people kind of wanting to reconnect and reward and revitalise with customers, or with internal staff events, where they've obviously been living in this virtual world for so long. They're wanting to look at opportunities to bring people together. So we're seeing quite a lot of that towards the end of the year. We've got big exhibitions and things like that booked in the last quarter of this year, and then we're seeing inquiries into next year for more overseas things. But again, a few big company-wide events that we're seeing some new business coming from companies that haven't done big events like that before, but actually they're now seeing, after what we've gone through in the last year, they want an opportunity to bring all their staff together and kind of celebrate kind of what, you know, getting through the tough last 18 months, 2 years it'll be by the time they do something next year. So some of those are in the UK as well. So it's been encouraging, like it's really increased inquiries wise.
Yeah, that's encouraging in itself, isn't it? Having clients that haven't previously done bigger stuff, that they've been feeling the need to communicate, celebrate, that we've all done it, got through it. Interesting question also, just staying with you, Kirsty, from Chris, who's asking just about terms and conditions. So all of these inquiries, all these great bookings, it sounds really hopeful for our sector. How much is it? How much flex is there in contract terms? How much are you able to secure confidence in terms of it going ahead? How much have you had to make massive cancellation flexible terms, both with the suppliers and yourselves with your end client?
Yeah, I think we have been, and I think when you're looking at UK stuff, I think it's more coming down to contingency planning as well. So with the stuff that's in the UK, I think we're trying to look at so I think I mentioned just before the call, we had a big conference exhibition that they wanted to, it was going to happen this next week. And right up until the delay in the Freedom Day, that was going to happen next week. So we've had to move that on. And I think that was, when we contracted it, it was last minute. Everything's a bit short lead time now, isn't it, at the moment we're working with, and venues and everybody, suppliers, we all want this to happen. So everyone's kind of working together to agree to, let's make a call kind of this far out and we'll move forward. New stuff that we're looking at for kind of towards the end of the year, we're working on a lot of things where it's either fully live, or is there a contingency to make it hybrid, or can we set it up as hybrid, but if we decide to go live, can we? So it's kind of working through with suppliers and with the clients of what do they want it to look like, and if we were to have to lock down again, or there were further restrictions, what does that look like? Or if there was an outbreak of COVID, or there was people that tested positive, how does that impact? So I think it's just having those conversations at the beginning, whereas I think it's just a new way of working, isn't it, where kind of 2 years ago we definitely, you know, include all the health and safety in the contingency planning and crisis management and stuff, but we're having that conversation at contracting stage now, whereas I think before you'd have that further down the line. So it's just kind of maybe changing the order in which we're having those conversations.
Does any part of you, I'm going to come to Kate, feel that you can charge for all this extra work? Because I know everyone's doing, you know, contingency proposals, you know, plan B, plan C and D. Are we still working on the same margins and pricing, or are you able to actually charge for, you know, what we're worth? It's always been a difficult one.
I think we need to open up Freshly Squeezed consultancy. Yeah, COVID consultancy. I don't know. But, I mean, we're finding that companies sort of, you know, they're our clients, all of our stuff's business, you know, business, but you know, that there is a wide scale acceptance that the terms have changed, and that we have to, not only do we have to include in that sort of flexibility as much as, you know, as much as we can, but also, you know, that they are building in and accepting that there may be a small financial loss. and there is more of an acceptance of that now, whereas this time last year everybody wanted every penny back from everything and it was just slightly more tricky, whereas I think it's made it a bit easier now that we've got a year of experience of it, or over a year of experience, sadly, of it. Weirdly, we're not getting that many questions about COVID. When people are when we're speaking to our clients, we're actually offering that information as opposed to our clients bringing it up in the sort of pitching phase.
Interesting. Chris, what about you in terms of contracts and also execution, getting answers back when you're looking, airlines, hotels, all this great inquiries, but where is there a a pipeline issue?
Not particularly. I think that there's obviously, unfortunately, some people have moved on from roles and stuff like that, but I think that we've still got the context that we need to get them. Obviously, it's sometimes not as quick, but we just realistic with our clients that I mean, it's not a surprise that some hotels might be a bit slower coming back if they're closed. But also just touching on what we were saying before about what people want to be doing. I know that a lot of the time we talk about UK clients, but interestingly, where we've got clients elsewhere in Europe and especially in the US, where they're just right, all guns blazing, let's go ahead, let's do stuff. It's interesting seeing the US as a case study of how they've dealt with COVID and how people want to meet, and actually that it's the older demographic that want to get out because they've lived through other massive life events. So that's the bit that fills me with confidence that moving forward it's going to be fine, and people are confirming it's not. We had and obviously the guys are saying that there was a lot of we have a lot of briefs and stuff like that. You send a proposal and they go, oh, well, let's wait and see what happens. But at least people are confirming now. They understand the terms and conditions. They understand that they're booking during a pandemic now. There's not we want to have everything back and be able to just cancel. And our biggest thing with all of our clients is that if you commit to that amount of money, you commit that you're spending it at some point. So that makes the conversations with suppliers much easier, airlines, whatever it is, to say, we're going to book it for January, but if it doesn't happen, we're going to move it. We're not going to get into an awkward conversation of, well, we want everything back. So yeah, and we have to give a little to take a little as well.
Okay, interesting.
We have had a lack of availability. In the States, particularly Miami, Caribbean. So if for anything in 2021, for say Q4 2021, there is a lack of availability. We've found. I'm not sure what anyone else has. Don't know if it's just us.
I think we'd have, what you were touching on, we've actually found we're struggling to get a response. We're not getting a response rate back from suppliers that we were getting. So I think, we've obviously lived through this last year or so where everyone's kind of understood a lot of people are on furlough, response times are slower. But we're finding now that the demand is much higher from customers, but we're not getting the level of response back from suppliers. So it is taking us longer to get things like airlines, particularly we've struggled with, whereas before COVID, we had an account manager and we had a direct line. Now all we have is a group's email address. And when we would get a response back within 24 hours, now it's taken us 4 or 5 days a week to get a response on a quote. And then we're having to go back again and, upgrades and all those kind of things are just taking us a lot longer than they did. The other thing on the airlines, I don't know if anyone else is coming across this, is that we're finding that they've reduced the size of the aircraft on some of the major routes. So some incentive events that we'd sold and we moved to next year, when we've come to buy the flights for those this year, we can't actually get the capacity we need because they've either cut the routes down. So we normally book them across regional airports where we knew these are popular routes. We know we can get 200 seats or whatever that we need. We're either finding they've got a smaller aircraft, so I can't get the number of seats I need, or they've actually reduced the routes. So we've actually had to charter next year for an incentive where we would normally have used kind of like the scheduled airlines and things. So that's something that we're finding still is a challenge at the moment.
Yeah.
What else is challenging with this fantastic demand, but the execution? Is it, we've touched on contracts, which seems to be actually smoothed over a little bit. Is it availability, timeframes, Pricing, is there anything else that's a challenge to get this to execute?
Yeah, I think that, sorry, can I go? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Biggest thing for me is that I think that some suppliers they basically chosen one side of the net each of, right, we're going to make everything back and be painful, and someone will book us, like you were saying, Kate, about being super busy with leisure market and everything else. So they have almost dumped the group's market for the moment. And then others that are super keen on the business, and they really want to work with you and understand the challenges and everything else. And I think that's where to get stuff back and to confirm stuff is the challenge for me, is that there's a big differential between that. And we rely heavily on people like Rakesh and Nikki and Chris and people like that for the DMC side of it, and knowing what they are, because being a small team, we don't have all the direct contacts. So even with the airlines, Kirsty, you're saying we work through all of our flights, and they were almost doing the hard work for us of keeping those contacts in place. But yeah, it is a challenge. But again, I think that people understand it, like clients understand it. They understand it's a bit longer. If you say, hey, look, we're gonna need to take 2 weeks to get it back rather than a week, they're not looking going, oh well, why have your standards slipped? So yeah.
Although I don't know about you guys, but we've had some incredibly short timeline briefs as well. Like, we are organising a party this weekend that we got the brief for last Monday.
Yeah, we're seeing that. I think that's one of the new things, that is everything's on a short lead time, whereas before your events would be a few months away or even 12 months away. Everything's very short lead time now, whether that's live events or virtual. Everything is on a very short lead time.
Yes, yeah, and it feels like we're in sprints at the moment. Oh no, sorry, I was just going to say, it feels like we're in sprints. Every time there's an announcement, you get a sprint, and then a load of inquiries based on that sprint. And then I'm hoping next week the same thing will happen.
Yeah.
If it's next week, is it next week?
Week after.
The week after next, sorry. Yeah.
Chris, you were saying? I
was just saying that it's all short lead times and pricing and everything else, but still 60-day payment terms, everybody, and we want to keep our money and all of that sort of thing. And I think that also from a client point of view, we're lucky we've got clients, as we all do, that don't do the tender process and everything else. But we've had a couple of clients where they've used this opportunity to go through a massive tender process, and they are looking purely on pricing and what can you do fully virtual and everything else. And it's such a moving target, but then still wanting 60 days from the end of the month you put the invoice in and all of that sort of thing, and almost making us bankroll that. But yeah,
it's interesting. I think there's definitely more sort of tendering, sort of pitchy approach now that a lot of the meetings are virtual, because they can do 3 back-to-back. Our clients can do 3 back-to-back pitches from agencies, whereas before the whole thing would have just taken a whole lot longer. And I think they've had more time online, just looking around at the competition. And
have you had to do the blind pitch where you can't even see their faces? Have you guys done that? I've heard that's just the most awful thing you could ever do.
I think it's about the same as being in a boardroom where they're actually on their laptops. So I'm not sure if it's that different.
Yeah. It's this one, right, where they're looking at the other screen. Like, yeah. I'm sorry, what was that? Yeah.
Got a question here about insurance and whether does insurance play any part of building confidence, securing, helping you through this process for, again, back to execution? Does insurance play any part in the conversation?
Well, a tiddly bit, I suppose. Just a question beforehand, trying to find information about what the regulations are is really difficult, and everything's so grey. So, whether that's sort of double vaccinations versus lateral flow tests, and, trying to get the information out of insurance companies and trying to kind of work on the risk assessment side of things is a lot trickier, because the government just haven't put out, or our industry hasn't put out, a sort of blueprint of guidelines, and that I'm aware of anyway.
Yeah, let's come on to that, because I've got that as a note. So just another couple of quick questions, I think, on this section is are you finding the inquiries are sector specific at all? Or do you think it's just the personalities that you're dealing with that are driving who is going back to live and who isn't? Go to Kirsty first, please.
Yeah, I definitely don't think there's a sector. I think it's coming from all over. I think it is probably down to either personalities or kind of the values of the business or the culture of the business, where they're people, you've got kind of the two camps of people, haven't you? The people that are kind of desperate to get back to live experience and travel and experience things. And then you've got people that are maybe a little bit more anxious and a bit more cautious, and they want to go more down either the keep virtual or go with the hybrid route. I think it kind of comes down to whoever either that person is leading or the company, but we haven't seen a particular sector. I don't know if the other guys have.
No, we haven't seen a sector. We've seen location based, as I touched on earlier about where the client's based, but also the specific client. We've got one client with two divisions where one wants to do live and one wants to do fully virtual, so it's more up to them about what they can do personally and their personality behind it versus its specific company. But I think a big thing is, and we touched on another call, was that it's people are waiting whilst they figure out what they're doing in their offices. So if their staff aren't back yet and maybe have confirmed an event but haven't actually communicated it yet, because if they're finding the right time to communicate it out. So Freedom Day will be a big one where people are like, now that we're free, by the way, we're doing something in October, rather than doing it in the depths of when you're not allowed to do anything. Everyone's response is just, yeah, that's not going to happen. So
I think I get the feeling, the vibe, I don't know about everyone else, that certainly from the people that we're speaking to, that you know, they've got healthy budgets. And I don't, you know, I think that there's just a bit of a hesitancy, you know, whether employees will, for example, with an incentive, whether they'll take up the offers of going away. And also there's still a bit of a culture of saving costs, because that's one thing the pandemic has done, even in our clients that are actually succeeding with the pandemic, if that makes sense. They're thriving in the pandemic exponentially. But so there's a real mix.
I think one of the big things was that one of the announcements that came out was the not needing to isolate as a close contact, because what we found is that people aren't risk adverse to going to an event, whether that's the football at Wembley or a conference or whatever, but it's if I sit near somebody and get the dreaded notification on my thing and then I have to sit indoors for 10 days, that's what they're scared of. So it's one, and then we saw it again with the US. As soon as they got rid of that and you went back to testing and everything else, people were more likely to go out, because the fear is, I'm not speaking to everybody, people are obviously still worried about it, but just in general, the fear of getting COVID is subsiding. It's just the impact on isolation and and having to isolate when you come back from destinations and stuff like that is the main driver.
Yeah, I think this potential announcement this week about the amber list, if you're fully vaccinated, not having to isolate, that's going to make a huge difference, I think, with the inquiries. So I think, like you say, we'll probably see another kind of surge, Kate, on that. I think we're even seeing like even healthier budgets in some cases, because people have been sat on them. So like those, as you're saying, those customers that have thrived in the pandemic have not only done well, but they've got the budget from the event that maybe wasn't spent last year, and then it's this year. So it's actually, what can we do? And you have got, you know, we've had a few, as I was mentioning earlier, we had a conversation yesterday with a client that wants to bring like a company conference internationally and bring everyone together. And they're talking about doing that in the UK in September, but that includes flying people in from all around the world, including places like Australia. So, you know, there's some real kind of optimism out there and like a real desire to do something and get everybody together, because, you know, it's been so long and people just want that opportunity, don't they, and kind of holding on to the chance that it may happen. So that's really encouraging.
I've got to say, I think this has been one of the most positive talks that we've had, and hopefully that is because that is the reality of the sentiment. I'm pretty sure it is, because that's why we're talking to the front line. What are you guys seeing? So let's go to the Monday announcement, which actually pretty much said what's happening on the 19th, which is no restrictions, no face masks, no social distancing, full capacity, no testing even. So since that announcement, let's go to Kate. What did you think, and have you seen any discernible kind of direct reaction from clients, or what are you expecting to see? Tell us your thoughts about back to live and what Monday meant.
I think to be completely honest, it hasn't made any difference. we have had, in the last month, we've had a surge, definitely had a surge of inquiries. And I'm not sure that the last week has been any different. I couldn't really say that there's been a difference. And I want to say, though, that we're not just sitting on here being positive, that this is genuine stuff that's happening. Well, I'm not saying this as an agency owner who's trying to look good. We genuinely are. See, it is positive for our industry because we are genuinely seeing more inquiries, and people, as Chris and Kirsty said, are signing contracts for actual events. And I think that's the difference. I think it's this collection of announcements that that everyone is growing in confidence. And over the last month, we've just seen a general increase in inquiries and existing clients saying, right, let's go. We're ready to take off again. But I would say we're still doing 2 to 3 virtual events a month. So there is still a place for virtual, but there has been a slump in inquiries for virtual from our perspective. But we're running 2 to 3, which is anything from product launches to sort of fun games and, you know, just more fun stuff as well. But yeah, so I just think, yeah, since last Monday, I wouldn't say specifically there's been a difference, but a general uptake over the last month, definitely. And I think that's just only going to get bigger after the 19th for everybody.
Kirsty?
Yeah, I'd say we've seen the same like surge over the last kind of 2 months, and it has been really busy this week. But I'm not sure if it's necessarily down to that announcement or the same thing as what Kate said. It's been a gradual, like, as things keep happening and people keep kind of looking at, I think people are sitting on it, and every time there's a bit more of an announcement, it's a bit more of an encouragement to actually, yeah, I'll take that forward. I think, as I said already, though, some people are still a little bit cautious about what they're going to do, but yeah, same thing. It is definitely positive and encouraging that these inquiries are coming through, but we are still getting virtual inquiries. So I've had a virtual inquiry today, so we're still doing 2 or 3 a week virtual events, and we're getting the hybrid stuff in there now. So that's the interesting conversation at the minute, talking about hybrid for September, and are people going to maybe start to change their minds on that now we've had this kind of almost definite is Freedom Day in a couple of weeks, but what will that look like in September? Because again, I think going back to the thing earlier about what's annoying me, then you hear in the news, oh well, we'll have all the curves back by the winter. So I think it'll be interesting to see what the response is going to be to that, and if people continue down the route of hybrid, or there is more of a surge towards live events.
Yeah, and Chris, so similar question, but also if you're trying to get people back to come to an event, are you looking at any sort of testing as part of that kind of route back to live and confidence building and getting attendees happy to come? Are you looking at testing going forward, even if you don't have to?
Yeah, I mean, we've had the conversation with clients. It's actually interesting that some clients are actually against it. It's like, you get your travel pack to go, and by the way, you've got to book your test. I think that people will do it, and I think that we're always super conscious that if we're talking about something that's happening now versus in a month time, 2 months time, or whenever the event is, it's just yes, we've got it in there. I mean, we're even talking about one for June next year, and the client's still a bit of an apprehensive client and saying, well, if we have to test, does that go in the budget and everything else? And rather than saying, oh no, that won't happen, because I think we've all been in that situation at some point in the last year and a half, that we sat there and went, oh, this will be gone in 6 months, and it hasn't. That we haven't had an instance of having to do it yet, but we've always got it there if needs be. I mean, we've adhered to, we did the event in Mexico, we adhered to the testing in and out there. We dealt with the US client. A lot of our clients now have a COVID expert or a panel on how to do that, and part of the app that we used had a whole page on COVID and what they should do pre-event, during event, what the testing was. And yeah, adding a COVID testing morning is a great group activity, by the way. And then but it's actually quite a nice togetherness thing when you announce to everybody that they haven't got COVID, and it's like, hey, we're all together. So yeah, it works. And I think the biggest thing is that people, there's no country that this hasn't touched. It's not that, yes, some people in bigger ways than others, but if we put testing in, or masks, or still wearing them, or anything like that, and there's no one that's going to come and go, oh, what's testing? I mean, I don't know whether, I mean, I've had 50 tests. Everyone's had them now. People are used to it. So I don't think it's a sticking point for people not to do it.
Kirsty, I think if you've got kids, then you're used to doing lateral flow tests. But I think that a lot of the people I know that don't have families aren't having to do them that often, actually. So it's a little bit, it's a little bit newer for them.
Yeah, I think it is through, you're absolutely right. I think it is through events that's where it will come about. Well, Kirsty, what about you in terms of, are you thinking of testing as part of your program?
Yeah, I think again, a similar thing. We haven't actually had the live event yet where we've had to do it. So we've been thinking about it for the events that were going to happen. So I think I mentioned earlier that I had an event that was going to happen, an incentive from last year. We're now moving it for the 5th time, but we were really, really hoping we could make it work in the summer. And we've just had to make the call that it's not going to happen. But with that, again, what's been the challenge, I think, and will continue to be the challenge, is that you don't, because it's changing all the time, we could decide now for an event that's happening in September, what's the testing regime, what's the processes we're going to put in place, what are the rules we have to stick to, how far apart the chairs need to be, all those kind of things. But actually come September, it could have changed. So I think it's thinking through things, it comes back to that contingency thing of what can we make a plan that's going to work. So I think what's going to be really interesting is seeing, one of the things we're thinking about is like buffets and food, and what do the menus look like, because actually what's people's feeling going to be about, conferences and events? It's all about buffets, isn't it? And so actually, are people going to be comfortable with that idea? A lot of the time over in the US, it's family style dining. Are people going to feel comfortable with that, or is that going to change going forward? So I think that's one of the things we're having to think through more and more. And when we're looking at whether it's UK or other destinations, even now, if you get a briefing for, I don't know, whether it's Italy or whether it's Miami, you're kind of thinking through, if things are going to be as they are now, what do we need to do to, it's not just about abiding by what the rules and the regulations are, but actually how do we make our guests, our customers, people, how do we make them feel the most comfortable? Because you are going to have, the people that are really comfortable with it, they're happy not to wear their mask, they just want to get out there and have a great time. But there's going to be the other people that are a bit more cautious and are thinking about it. And I think there's two things. There's the people that don't want to get dinged on the self-isolation, but there's people that are genuinely really still worried about catching it. So it's all of these things that go into the mix, I think, that we're still having to consider, whether it's in this country or further afield. And I think it's going to be that continuing challenge as we move forward, and just to see kind of, what is going to happen, because we've been told it's opening up and things can go back to normal, but in a month's time, what are the infection rates going to look like, and what will that kind of look like when we kind of translate that into an event?
Kate, you've got an event Monday, did you say?
No, on Saturday.
Saturday. So
yes.
Is testing part of your plan at all?
Well, it is for staff, yeah. It is for everybody, for staff, but for our client, it's really up to them. It's a sort of more of a party. So we have to, all we can do is recommend what we suggest, but for our staff, we stick to very, very strict rules. In fact, we were just having the chat before about trying to find the information about whether the double whether you need to lateral flow if you've got a double vaccination certificate on the NHS app. So I think it would be really helpful, actually, a bit of resource if micebook was put something on their portal about COVID.
Yeah, I mean, there is
very difficult. You've got something. I know you've got something, but
no. I mean, I'm just going to say that there isn't any formal. There will be more, I think, event-specific formal guidance from the MIA, which is going to come out, but I don't think it will tell us how that specific part. But let's wait and see. Let's move on to. So something that we did an article yesterday about the announcement and what some industry leaders thought of it, and something that Sarah Threffel brought up was quite interesting, which I quite liked, is that now that the restrictions on capacity has been removed, so say I was doing an event for 50 people, I would have had to take up a big ballroom hotel rather than a room that took 50 people. So with the change in guidance, there hopefully will be a lot more availability. I mean, obviously we need to wait to see that through. I don't actually even have a question here, but I thought it was quite interesting that actually availability will become a little bit better, let's say in the UK because you just don't have to have as many people, or you don't need the big room to hold the smaller number of people. Chris?
I think that I agree that needing the smaller rooms, but I think that a lot of the availability at the moment is driven by leisure, so it's bedroom based. Either here or, and I saw also on the chat earlier about the Caribbean and the consumer market, that if they can't offer you the bedroom space, either they can't offer it to you, or their revenue managers are pushing up the price of those individual bedrooms because of that. And because it's the leisure market, they're taking the cheaper rooms that we want for our events, not the big suites and stuff like that. So yeah, not to go against your point, Chadden, but I think that it's more on the bedroom side of it that we're going to see the challenge. But I agree. I think it's speaking to a lot of the hotels where we were going through that capacity point of view, is that people weren't going to run an event if they had to take a ballroom of that size, because you've got some companies where people twin rooms. So if you're saying you have to sit 2 meters apart, but then you're twinning rooms, and then you've got the coffee break or the dinner, whose responsibility is it to, for example, Kate, on your event this weekend, that if there is still guidance that people are meant to have social distancing and stuff like that, if 2 people get a bit close throughout the evening, are you meant to go over and go, excuse me, you've got to be a little bit apart? Or is it that bubble that you're in and anything goes? And that's where I think well,
we still have to, we still have to follow the guidance. It's still the law. So, everything that's happening. But you're right. If 2 people, it's very difficult to go up and split up people. But you're not supposed to dance at an event, so that shouldn't be too much of a problem at the moment. You're not allowed to dance floor, and you're not supposed to dance or sing. So it's going to be
outside though. You can dance.
You can do it outside, yeah. So anyway, this weekend's different because we're still within the guidance of the law after the 19th. I just think we're going to have to be sensitive to each of our clients on an individual basis, and I think they're all so different, and we just have to really work with them to deliver an event that they feel comfortable with, and that whoever's going to be attending feels comfortable with.
And carrying on the call, as you mentioned, Ted, and we did that. So when we did the event, we actually were super worried about people sitting together and how would they react and all of this sort of thing. And on the first night, we had everything spread out, and tables of 2 and tables of 10, and then they just all went and stood right next to each other because that's what they wanted to do. So I think as long as you have it as a backup, and I've seen reposted on LinkedIn loads of times the wristbands and all of that sort of thing of different colors, and people will naturally do that. So you're not forcing someone into a situation, you're providing with the options. My feeling is that the vast majority of people will, if they're going to come on the trip or the event or whatever it is, they've committed to, right, I'm going to embrace what that is. So that's the positive side of it, that we overestimated what people's reaction was going to be.
Yeah. And I don't think we want to stifle. When you look at the reports from the football or from Leicester Square when Scotland came down to Wembley, or Ascot last week, groups of people naturally get together. And, although we can work with the client to provide the safest and most comfortable environment for them, ultimately people are people, and I don't think we want to stifle, once the rules are over and the dangers have disappeared, stifle people actually getting back to being sociable and normal.
I think it'll be a balance, won't it? It'll be about making sure we're not kind of cramming people into maybe how we would have done stuff before, because we want to make people feel comfortable. But once the rules have gone, at least we don't have to be doing that crazy thing of
COVID police.
Yeah, I saw an event recently where they did a staff update and they all sat in a meeting room a metre apart, and then they all went to the pub outside afterwards and sat on little picnic benches next to each other. So it was kind of like, what was the point in that? But it's human nature, isn't it? And I think it's that same thing. People see each other, and especially when the rules aren't there anymore, people are going to naturally gravitate to each other. So I think it's making sure there will be the people not comfortable, and as long as we're not making them feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. And do you know what? I really hope we go back to a situation where people aren't scared anymore, because the fear that's been bred in people in general, not just in events, I think is so sad, from children through to adults, the fear. I think it will be just a most wonderful time when people aren't scared anymore.
But I think that one thing we do need to be careful of is that people either don't want to attend if they want to take an incentive, for example, or they, if we put the rules in place that you have to be double vaccinated and so on and so on, there's people who freedom of choice don't want to have that. So when we're dealing with clients, we've had people go, well, what do we give them if they qualify but can't attend? So it's that you're still trying to incentivize people that if you're saying, oh, we're going to go here and it's going to be great, and someone's sitting going, well, I'm not going to want to qualify for that because I don't want to go. What is the alternative and what are the backups to that? And that's questions from clients as to, is it a monetary thing? Is it a personal trip? Is it whatever they want to do, rather than just being, well, if you don't want to go, that's your own fault.
Yeah, so you're having to shape your proposals to take them into account.
Yeah, interestingly, I've seen that already. So events that should have happened this year that have moved to next year with a client, and they do 2-level incentives, and one's going to Vegas and one's going to Barcelona. And I've had end customers who are on those trips saying they don't want to go to Vegas, can they go to Barcelona instead because they don't feel comfortable, or people actually saying, do you know what, we don't want to go anyway. And these trips are for over a year, like they're a year away, but some people, you know, it's only been a handful of people, but some people are already kind of saying that now. So it's a little bit, it's a shame really, like you're saying, Kate, that there's obviously still that fear there, and to think that far ahead. So yeah, I think it is something that maybe we do need to start thinking about in kind of proposals and stuff, and having that conversation with customers.
Let's move on to something that was raised earlier about offices. And, you know, I think that we're kind of guessing that there's a parallel between organizations deciding about their office and work kind of work culture going forward. And once they decide that, that's when they might start to think about events. But what about you guys in terms of your own offices? And are you back in offices? Are you staggered? What's your office plan? And how, you know, we've got quite a lot of suppliers on the call as well. How would you see the future direction when suppliers used to come into your offices, bring their, you know, hotels, DMCs, etc.? How do you see that working going forward? Kate, go to you.
Well, I'm actually in the office today, but we're still remote. So I think until we have the guidance after the 19th that it's okay to go back to offices, you know, that actually we're just letting everyone remain remote. But I have to say, from our clients' perspective, it is the sort of focus of the moment, is trying to figure out how most of them are not going to go back to a normal situation where everyone's going to be back in the office. The majority of them are working to some sort of like hybrid situation where you kind of come into the office 2 to 3 days a week. So I think that will be the reality. That will be a bit of a challenge, I suppose, for those meetings like you're talking about from the wonderful DMCs and airlines and hotel groups and things, because that personal contact is so important. The relationship you build face to face is wonderful. And I think it would be a shame if that stopped working. So I think that there's a way of getting people, even if we stay remote, to meet somewhere, to have that face-to-face meeting somewhere and somehow. I'd like to think that. I don't know what everyone else thinks. I'd like to think that.
Yeah, we were having a conversation earlier. We had a call just before this one, and looking at it in the same way with a lot of our clients are, that smaller meetings rather than the travel time and everything else, and from a supplier point of view, that they haven't booked it in and then they're halfway driving down, you go, oh, sorry, I can't make it because people are not in the office or whatever, all the stuff that happened before COVID. But I think then that it will put the emphasis on things for the face-to-face element, like IBTM, the glorious micebook events that they do, all stuff like that, where you're actually getting together in 2 or 3 times a year rather than lots of individual small meetings face-to-face. That you can do it. We've all learned that you can do it through this point of view as well. Can I just really quickly on the chat from Chris about
Please.
the categories and catering for people that are dropped. That's what I was trying to say, is that while we're being optimistic, we've got to make sure that we're not just lumping everyone into people aren't scared and they're doing it because they're of the fear or whatever. There's genuinely people that can't do it, have to be worried about COVID long term, etc. And yeah, we do need to make sure that there are fail safes in place and things that incentivize them as well, and whether that's a tiered incentive program. But yeah, being optimistic is not that we're just ignoring that there's some people that this is genuinely going to be a lifetime of worry for them.
Yeah, no, thank you, Chris. And Chris for the question. Kirsty, to you about offices and what's your situation with First Event?
Yeah, so at the moment we are still working from home, but we're going into the office when we're kind of streaming virtual events because we need the equipment in the office, or if we need to go into the office. So I think some people are doing kind of 1 or 2 days a week in the office, dependent on when they need to go in, but we are predominantly still from home. So we're going to be going back probably to more of like a 2-3 day a week. We've grown in size over this time, which has obviously been really good. So we actually couldn't all be in the office at once at the moment. So I think people are looking forward to going back and kind of getting in the office and seeing people. On the supplier visit thing, I think I agree you can do it virtually, and we proved that. And on the travel time and exactly what you were saying, Chris, about having to cancel them or whatever. But then on the flip side for me as well, I think when you have someone coming into your office and you physically leave your desk and go and sit downstairs and you give them that dedicated time, it does have a real value against actually sitting on a Zoom call when you get distracted by other things and you're not maybe really giving it your full attention, or it's easier to say I'm not coming now because I've got another meeting if it's only a virtual thing rather than them actually coming. And as we've all said, you can't replace that like face-to-face interaction with people. So I'd love to still see them happen in a way, but I don't think we'll go back to how things were before, now that we have proved that you can do things virtually. So if it is going to the IBTM and things like that more, or there's more things like that pop up, but I think the face-to-face bit still I think has got a really big place to play in the relationships.
Brilliant. So we're nearly coming up to the hour. Thank you so much. Any further questions, please just pop them into the chat, see if we've got time for any. I'm just going to then ask for some closing comments, and I guess if you had a wish, whether it was client side, government, supplier, to anyone, what would that wish be? And I'm going to go to Chris first and let the others to give the other two a time to think.
Okay, thanks so much. I think it's more just clear guidance, like when like I mentioned earlier about the transatlantic committee and it's going to happen, and then when they said, oh, releasing on Twitter, oh, double vaccinated aren't going to have to isolate when they come back, and then the next tweet was at some point in the summer, and then the next one was we'll release details next month. And it's like, well, that doesn't help, even if it's the worst case scenario of, and I've been in that core of like, let's not do things too quickly. But if they go, right, 30th of July, we're going to do this, and set it out like they did with the roadmap. But just to put false hope out there, it doesn't help. So my wish is that it was more kind of, we've got a committee, this is when they're going to report, this is what we're doing, and these are the reasons why, versus yeah. And wish that England win tonight.
Yes, thanks, Chris. Kirsty.
Yeah, really similar. I think it's that the bit for us is the international travel piece and the what's going to happen. And I think it's this current thing of the green, amber, red list. And is that going to stay, or is there going to be a new version of that? It was very different last summer. And then, I think, as I said earlier about the amber list as well, like Chris said, knowing what's going to happen and actually having more clarity of when things will change. So is this still going to be that if they're going to change this on amber list, will there be a point when that changes? Would a new variant or would a new something change that? Or once you've made that decision, is it going to stay the same for amber countries? And I think it's just knowing what that's going to be, or actually in 3 months' time, will they change the rules on amber countries? And that's what happens for green countries. So I think it's more of this is what it's going to be and it's going to stay this way, I think is probably what mine would be.
Yeah, thank you. And Kate?
Oh my gosh, I was racking my brains then thinking, yeah, England win would be good. My wish would probably be that the momentum carries on, and that I just wish very much that people will be comfortable being with people again, and that all of this, that people will be able to put it behind them, whether they're our clients, whether it's our industry, whatever it might be, that the fear disappears and that people can be happy and positive again. That would be my wish.
Yeah, well, with you three making sure that our clients and industry feel that way, I think we've got a good chance. So thank you so much for taking time out to be on the talks today. Really appreciate your honesty. It's been really insightful. Thanks everyone for joining. We've got, if you're around, as I said, 14th of July, next Wednesday at Waterloo, we've got the event. Go to mustbeonit.com and click on events for details. It's a rock up and pay as you go, just to meet each other. As many of the panelists have said, it's just so nice to see people face to face. So hopefully we'll see some of you then. Otherwise, the V Awards, 3rd of September, the early bird deadline is this Friday. Thanks everyone. Have a great week. Come on, England.
Yeah.
And thanks, Chetan, for setting this up.
Thank you, Chetan. Yeah.
Welcome, guys.